At this time, I'd like to call the regular meeting of the Nashville Town Council for Tuesday, January 17th to order. Would you please stand for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let us pray. Father, we come to you tonight and ask your guidance and leadership in making the right decisions that will benefit all of our citizens of Nashville. Amen. Amen. Before we have our public comments, I would like to say to you, Lynn, that on behalf of the council, we've had you in our thoughts and prayers at the passing of your dear brother. We have some people that would like to speak. Ms. Sims, I will wait till we get to that topic that you want to speak about, if that's okay with you. Okay. James, yours is, you may come on and speak and state your name and your address.
My name is James Baker at 103 East Green Street. I was just wanting to know, there has been some construction work that had been done on Green Street when we had the water main break, and that happened on November the 21st, and here it is now, well, about January, almost 2 months later, and that road is starting to drop on both sides. It's shifting, and that hole in that road in front of my house is almost the size of a small car, and like I say, and it's going to be more than just filling that hole, because the way that water went down the street and the way it was piled up, you can see where the road is busting up all in a large area down there on the end of the block. And also, when that water was laying down there, that water protruded over the new sidewalk, and one section of that new sidewalk, it started blistering up from, I guess, when that water had laid on it. It started peeling this concrete up. And one end of that sidewalk, one is higher and one's lower, and that's a tripping hazard. And also, even down on West Green Street, there is a section out there in the middle of it. It's a good sized hole, and I mean, this is 2 months along, and we got all them school buses and the school crosswalk. But there's a lot of heavy vehicles that come up and down that road, and that road is really suffering some damage. And I just want to know, how much longer is it going to be before something's going to be done about that?
Well, now that they know about it and the damage of it, I'm sure they'll take care of it.
And also, I mean, I've had incidents where they did a sidewalk replacement as along with the water break, that my embankment along the front of my yard is a royal mess. I can't even take my lawnmower in sections of it because I got low spots and high spots. And I don't think it's right that I've got to go back out there and regrade that. And I'm just asking, can someone help me regrade it? Someone come out and fixed a couple of sprinkler heads that was broken, during the sidewalk construction, but during the flooding, it just made a real big muddy mess. I got high spots and low spots on my embankment. And I just want to know if someone's going to come out there and level my embankment back off for me.
I'm sure they will. Thanks for making us aware of it. At this time, we'll have our approval of our meeting minutes. The first meetings are from December the 6th, 2022. Were there any corrections to these minutes?
On page 15.
Page 15.
We're talking about the junction and the new plan for the parking lot. And Kate, I think, was the one who talked about the retention pond. I mentioned the entry next to Ms. Matthews' house, and also the estimate for the parking lot, and was about, I think, $40,000 over our budget, and that needs to be in the minutes.
I don't remember making a comment about the retention pond, but if I did, I did.
I didn't, and I thought, well, what did it be?
Any other corrections? If not, do I hear a motion to approve the minutes with those corrections?
Move to approve.
Second, all those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
The next minutes we need to look at are January the 3rd, 2023, and are there any corrections to those minutes? If not, do I hear a motion to approve the minutes? Second, all those in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Minutes are approved. The next item on our agenda is update and report from Cloudwise from Kyle. Kyle, how do you pronounce your last name? Okay, I'm glad you said it. Thank you. Would you please come forward?
It's been pronounced a lot of different ways, so
I bet.
I've answered pretty much everything. So, but first off, appreciate you allowing me to come up and speak a little bit here tonight. Just kind of give an update of the project, and a big thank you to Randy and his team and Taylor and everything. I know it's probably been a stressful few months as progress. Sometimes they say you unfortunately crack a few eggs to make omelets. We knew that coming in, as we all did. But as a whole, I feel like we've had a successful project because we actually have folks on net. We've got we started hooking up some customers and things of that nature. So things have started. We've actually got we're starting to service the community. Obviously, we got a long ways to go. Construction, heavy construction, we're about 90 to 95% complete, and that's what I say heavy construction as far as the drilling that everyone's seeing that causes some of the eyesore. Some of the unfortunate stuff that happens with the like the water main break there, which I do have an update on that. They're getting estimates from different companies to come out and actually fix that and take care of that. And part of that, we're at the mercy of the asphalt companies right now because they're not sending truckload after truckload out every week. So, but I appreciate folks bringing that up to make sure we properly address it. But the big thing is that we are progressing and getting fairly close to considering a completed project from our phase one, and then branching out to additional communities, because obviously the county of Nash, there's a lot of folks that need broadband. I mean, it's a need nowadays. So we've had some missteps along the way. I talked to the crews again tonight. They're still handing out the wrong door knockers. They're supposed to be saying, hey, we're coming up your street, and we're going to be doing construction in the next week or two or something of that nature. And they've got the wrong ones still. They're handing out the ones that say, sorry, we missed you. So we're trying to make sure we're taking the proper steps and get out there and have the awareness for everyone, because we definitely want to be a part of the community. This isn't a come in, knock through here and get some folks hooked up and then you never see us again. This is, we want to be here. This is, really what being part of this has been all about, working with the community. So, but again, from a high level, and sorry, I don't want to take up too much time, I'll answer as many questions as you may have, but as a high level, we're getting close to having that first phase done with, the major construction. And as the weather gets nicer and things get better, like right now, it's impossible to grade, add some soil and that sort of thing, but I want to make sure that come springtime when the weather breaks and seed actually takes and grass grows, that we're fixing everything. And we've had some delays, as far as getting some vaults, where the tying points and that sort of thing. They were supposed to be here a couple months ago, as everybody knows, with different supply chains and that sort of thing. So unfortunately, there's been spots where pipes have been hanging up out of the ground longer than we thought they would be, unfortunately. And now we just got the shipment showed up Sunday night. They were out there that night unloading all those things. So we're starting to get those in the ground to tidy that up and get the community back to where it should be. Nice green grass and looking good and serving everybody. So really appreciate everyone's patience and allowing us to come in and help serve the community and putting up with a couple of eyesores here and there. Where the grass isn't quite what it should be, but hopefully it's going to benefit everyone here shortly.
Kyle, how many towns have you done?
So we have currently under construction, currently have 4 projects under construction with 3 more as soon as these finish that we're going to jump to the next one. From a fiber standpoint, we've been serving Nash and Harnett County, I'm trying to think, Wilmington area, which is at New Hanover County, with fixed wireless for over 15 years. So from a broadband perspective, we've been serving communities for quite a long time. We're not new to the broadband game. We're newer to the fiber game. So from a fiber standpoint, Nashville's really the one that as our first, as a true fiber end-to-end point. So you guys get that, you're a first. So
We're not going to only be the original Nashville. We're going to be
yeah,
the original.
Yeah. So that's pretty exciting. And again, that's I've been doing fiber for almost 25 years now, which I hate saying that. It just means I'm getting older. But we're bringing a lot of folks in that have done it for a long time. So it's not new to some of us, but it's just new to Cloudwise. We're a broadband provider.
Well, we're excited. These birth pains are hard, though.
Oh, they are, yeah, especially when you're not used to it.
Right.
That's the thing. And that's why we want to make sure that we're doing right.
You see,
Communication is very important.
It is.
And that is one thing I would suggest, instead of just showing up in somebody's yard, door hangers, that's
Yep,
essential.
and you couldn't be more right, yep.
And also having someone who can communicate with the homeowner about what's going on.
Yep.
you say you're getting close to finishing phase one here in Nashville.
Yep.
When you say getting close, what time frame are we talking about? Months?
So what my personal target is, and it's going to be close, there's going to be some pockets that aren't quite finished, but it's to have light availability to the entire town by the end of the month.
By the end of this month?
Yes. There are, like I said, there's going to be some pockets like, Main Street, because there's a lot of concrete, there's a lot of, there's a lot of stuff that goes down through there. We need to have our tender gloves on to make sure that we're being okay there. There's some road construction going on up by the Walmart there where, with the DOT and that we can't go in there quite yet.
Right.
That sort of thing. So there are some pockets out there, but as a whole, that's our target, is to be able to have service for the entire community by the end of the month or early February. And then as a phase two, just to throw that out there, we're just going to roll some of the crews in to start heading towards basically Rocky Mount out, and apologies for not knowing the route number off the top of my head, but there's some additional networks over that direction that we're looking to connect to build redundancy. So like if a fiber gets cut over this way, you're still going to have service coming in from this direction so you don't lose service. So we're not just building a line to go at a fee, but we're also going to serve the community as we go in that direction. So that'll be over the next 90 days or so.
Good. Any other questions? Thank you, Kyle, so very much.
Absolutely, and I appreciate all the feedback, and, again, we want to be a part of the community and make sure that we're doing right, so. Well, there's some spots that a little bit different, but. We try to do the Boy Scout, leave it better than you found it. So that's our end goal, and that's why I say, come springtime when it gets nicer, we're going to do our sweeps to make sure that we're doing right. So,
Thank you for coming tonight. We appreciate it.
thank you.
Let us look at our old business agenda items. The first one is the Barnes Street streetscaping. Randy, would you please talk about that?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, so as you know, the town was awarded $750,000 rural transformation grant for streetscaping Barnes Street from the North Carolina Department of Commerce Rural Economic Development Division. We requested $940. This is the grant that we hired the professional grant writer to write for us, Kara Rogers with Dorner Grant Consultants. And since it was awarded, we have to pay her the 2% fee for preparing that, which we've done. So that takes the grant amount from $675 basically to $661,500. Now Withers Ravenel is a consulting firm, engineering firm that prepared the cost estimate that was submitted in that rural transformation grant application. And that project scope is different from what the people of Nashville wanted to see when we had the drop-in workshops and people got to put the stickers on which street design plans they like to see. But the one everybody liked was the $2.6 million version. And we weren't in a position to do that, but we wanted to take advantage of an application for the Rural Transformation Grant. So back in October, we had a discussion with the council and decided that we'd do a scale-back version of it, which was $1,186,000. At that time, with a grant of $940,000, the staff had figured out how we could afford that using a combination of MSD fund balance, MSD revenues, and a small, most likely internal loan to ourselves from our own fund balance to be paid back with a combination of a couple different sources. Anyway, when the award came and it was only $675, that changed things. So what we're looking at right now with the $661,500 grant, the town's share of that project is $524,977. And the Downtown Strong Advisory Board is recommending the town use $43,700 of the MSD fund balance, which is roughly $175,000, to buy that cost down for the project. And then they also are recommending that if we have to get a loan, which we most likely will, they would recommend $10,000 of their annual $40,000 in MSD revenues go to debt service. So where we're at, then the annual payments with what the advisory board is recommending would put a loan in the amount of $481,277. And if it had 5% for 20 years, the annual payment on that would be $39,972. Applying the $10,000 from the MSD to that $39,900 annual payment brings the balance, or the annual payment, down to $29,972. This is the amount we have to cover with the general fund, and it's higher than our finance director, John O'Keefe, is comfortable with. So we come up with a couple scenarios that we'd like to run past the council. If the general fund fund balance money, some of it could be appropriated to the project cost, we could reduce the loan amount and the annual payments. And then we come up with a scenario for possibilities of combination. John came up with 6 different ones. If the, assuming we go forward with this project and we do the amount of money that the advisory board is suggesting, if we took $25,000 from fund balance, then the loan amount would be $456,000. The annual payment $27,660. At $50,000 of fund balance, the annual payment goes to $25,596. At $75 of fund balance contribution, the annual payments go to $23,533. With $100,000, it goes to $21,469. $125,000, $19,405. And with a $150,000 contribution, we can get it down to $17,324. Now, John and I have studied this, the finance director, and what we're recommending to council is a contribution of the general fund to this Barn Street streetscaping project of $75,000. The town's current unrestricted fund balance is 4.3, and we feel that it would result in an annual payment of $23,533, which, you know, with some work, we think going forward, the general fund could service that amount of debt. Now, the council doesn't have to make a decision on this tonight. We have not gotten the grant agreement from the Department of Commerce yet on our rural transformation grant. It's going to be forthcoming, and when that does come, then we will have to, have approval of that grant agreement and to go forward with this project. I just thought it would be, it's something the council needs to think about, talk about, discuss, and come up with a game plan, because we are going to be getting that grant agreement probably sometime in February.
Randy, this $75,000 that you are suggesting, this is a one-time fund balance withdrawal, right?
It is. John, you may want to step to the podium, and some of these questions will likely be directed to you.
Yeah, the $75,000, that would be a one-time occurrence, but then every year thereafter for the next 20 years would be about $25,000 there. The one thing to think about on this is later on the agenda we have something for the Part F for the parks. If we go forward with this and say we're awarded something for parks, we would have to come up with a 50% match, and that would be about $250,000. If we did this and also got that, they're mutually exclusive. And then also we have the land purchase that we may have to do in the amount of $138,000. That's upcoming, and we also have $5 million worth of projects, with the fire station being 4.4. The remaining upfit on the rec center, and the only thing that would give me pause is if the fire station went 5% over, that's $220,000 right there. That is the only thing that gives me major pause.
I mean, we're getting ready to take hits from all angles. We need to make sure we don't overextend ourselves.
But I do believe with grants like this, if we don't accept
Oh, yeah.
something like this, I think we'll be blackballed and we won't be offered anymore. And you have to have grants this day and time to do things for your citizens.
Is it possible to have these items that John just mentioned available for us to discuss in work session?
Yeah.
Like as a whole, yes.
I'll put something together for you.
All the possibilities
Is
you
there
just
an
mentioned.
amount threshold that anything over $40,000, is that good with you? I have anything like that?
Oh, yes, large,
Okay.
large.
Or if you want, I'll do $1 if you guys want.
Large
No,
stuff.
Larger.
Okay.
That'd be good. Thanks.
What exactly is gonna be on the western side of the street?
One document that didn't make it in the packet, it's the actual scope of the Barn Street Streetscape project that was submitted in the application. And I had handed it out to the council before the meeting. Let me pull it up here so everybody can see it. So the top part of the page is kind of a street view illustration. So beginning on the west side of the street, all the project would take place in the right-of-way. The 2.6 million version had us obtaining a 10-foot easement on the west side that we could have a 10 or 12-foot walking multi-use trail come up on the west side. Then we'd have room for street trees, lights, decorative street lights, plantings, benches, and then, Barn Street as it is right now, a 3-lane design. And then on the east side, the original plan was for a 5-foot sidewalk, a 4-foot section in between the curb and the sidewalk, and again, another 4 to 5 foot easement on the back side then for the right-of-way trees and the plantings. That one is the one we determined was beyond our financial ability. So what this design does is scale that back, put everything in the right-of-way. We don't need an easement from property owners on either side. We do a 4-foot sidewalk on the west side. We have a 5-foot strip between the sidewalk and the curb and the gutter, where the overhead power line that is there right now would remain. This scope takes the power and telecommunication that are overhead on the west side, puts them over on that pole line, the overhead power line on the west side, so it's all there. And then anybody with a service line, telecommunication-wise, or electric line that's on the east side, it would give them an underground service so they could continue to have. But then what that does is it frees up the east side then for the decorative street lights, for the new sidewalk, and then for street trees, planting, shrubberies, and right-of-way streetscaping. It's not as grandiose as what we heard back from the community and the MSD stakeholders that they would like to see, but it is something on a scope that
And it
we
finally puts sidewalks on that west side, and it redoes all of the horrible sidewalks that are on the east side. Oh, no, sorry, swap that.
Yeah,
No,
they're bad.
keep that,
Some of-
yeah.
Some of them are bad.
And 4 feet is a nice size sidewalk.
So the bottom picture isn't an exact illustration or a markup of what it would look like. It doesn't show the overhead power and telecommunication on the west side. Those nice streets that you see in that bottom picture there, we wouldn't be able to plant anything that grows into the power lines. Well, you could, but they're just going to get whacked off anyway. So we would go back there with crepe myrtles and smaller arborvitae and things like that, which would add some color and some appeal, but wouldn't be anything that would find its way up into the overhead lines.
Okay, so council, we just need to study this and consider it and decide which direction to go. The next item on our agenda is the board and commission appointment. Sherry Moss, our Planning and Development Director.
evening, Mayor and Council. So tonight we have Planning Board and Board of Adjustment appointments with the Planning Board members or new members serving a 4-year term. So right as of now, we have 4 existing members for the Planning Board, in which I'm proposing 3 members from the Board of Adjustment who's willing to serve on the Planning Board, and they will remain 2 separate boards. So new appointments for the Planning Board I'm proposing is Ross Strickland, in which he's been on the Board of Adjustment for 20 years. Eddie Thomas, he's been on the Board of Adjustment for 12 years. And Dennis Evans, he serves as the Board of Adjustment ETJ member. So he's currently on the Board of Adjustment serving as an ETJ member, and he was just recently appointed by Nash County on January 9th. He was appointed from the Nash County Board of Commissioners to the Planning Board to serve as its ETJ member. And so for the Board of Adjustment, currently have 4 members on that board, in which we're needing more members on that board. So we have 2 members from the Planning Board who's willing to serve on that board, and they are Bill Lump and Wayne Sears. Bill Lump, he's been on the Planning Board now for maybe 5 years, and Wayne Sears has been on the Planning Board for a little over a year, or for more than a year. And also Brian West, he's a new member. He was just recently appointed by the Nash County Board of Commissioners as an ETJ alternate for for the Board of Adjustment. And believe some of those members are here tonight, and I'm just
If you're here, please stand so we can thank you in advance for your service to our town. Thank you so very kindly. We certainly do appreciate it.
And so I'm just recommending approval for appointments for Ross Strickland, Eddie Thomas, Bill Lump, and Wayne Sears.
Sherry, I have a question. What
Yes.
is the rationale for having the same people on both boards?
It's only 2 members from both boards. So that, because we have a meeting coming up January 31st, and some of those, so I know in the Board of Adjustments, it's been, since I've been here, we haven't really had anybody to apply. The vacancies has been on our website. So I mentioned it to both boards, and those members from both boards were willing to help out.
Do I hear?
And also they're familiar with the ordinance, whereas with the Planning Board, where we had quasi-evidentiary hearings there, Bill Lump, he's familiar with that area.
Okay, one is an advisory board and one
Yes.
is a quasi.
Correct. So, and again, we will be having board training. So again, it's not like a whole board that I'm empty of. So you're having 2 from one board and 3 from another board. One serving both boards as an ETJ member, and you have 2 from Planning Board and 2 from Board of Adjustment.
On December the 9th, in the manager's report, you said that you were going to bring before the council a proposal to merge.
That's clarification. We're not doing that. No, because right now you have 4 and 4 before these appointments. So you had, because we recently had people to come off the board who didn't want to be reappointed. So I had to make a drastic decision because we needed people on the board for our upcoming January 31st meeting.
Is there any conflict of interest when you have the same people on both boards?
No, it's not, because for any appeals or zoning interpretation, that goes straight to the Board of Adjustment.
Are there any more questions?
I just wanted to know, do we have term limits for all board members on both of these boards, or are these the only ones that are now going to have term limits?
So like how many terms they can serve?
So I think you're appointing until 2026 for the top, and then until 2025 for the bottom.
Yes, so Board of Adjustment is 3-year, and Planning Board is a 4-year.
And that's what we have for all of the board members?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. And also, in addition to that, so I know when I worked in Vance County, they had theirs was a little different. They had exact members for both board, but they served dual roles. And also, well, that was my experience working with them. And and with Sean, in town of Bailey, I believe they have the same board doing dual roles. But in this case, it's kind of different because we don't have a whole board of the same people, but we have maybe two, like I said, 2 or 3 members from each board having dual roles. So I personally don't believe it's not going to be any conflict.
Does our attorney think that there's any conflict of interest?
It's perfectly legal to have an individual serve in two appointed public positions. As Sherry mentioned, the duties of the planning board and the duties and functions of the Board of Adjustment are very, very, very different. Getting the distinction between legislative and quasi-judicial is tough enough, but when you have advisory and quasi-judicial, those are almost polar opposites. But as long as there's some experience on each board, which I think is the objective of having some officers sitting in both positions, that's probably a good thing. But there's no legal reason why this arrangement is not appropriate.
Perfect, thank you.
So with that being said, do I hear a motion to appoint the planning board and board of adjustment members?
Mayor, being no objections from the board or from the public, I move that we approve her appointments.
So I hear
Second.
all those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
So we have you appointed to these boards. Thank you again so kindly for serving the town of Nashville. The next item on our agenda is the Drake Street no parking ordinance. And Randy, I'll let you speak to that, and then I'll let Ms. Sims speak because she was on the.
Sure. So at the January 3rd council meeting, the council voted to keep Drake Street a one-way between Washington and Elm Street, and to prohibit all on-street parking on Drake Street between Washington and Elm Street. So staff has drafted an ordinance that does just that. The Nashville Code of Ordinance currently provides for 9 on-street parking zones on Drake Street between Washington and Elm Street. There's a reserved parking space for the Superior Court Judge. There's a reserved parking space for the County Clerk of Court, as there is for the Sheriff, and 3 reserved spots for marked Sheriff patrol cars. There's also 3 2-hour parking zones on between Monday and Friday from 8 to 5. So this ordinance undoes all of that on-street parking. I know at the January 3rd council meeting, there was a concern that there may not be enough width on Drake Street to continue to have parking on both sides and still be able to safely get emergency vehicles up or down Drake Street, whatever the case may be. So the fire chief, once we got our ladder truck back, which we have now again, took one of our big trucks down Drake Street, and there's a picture there, so you can see there is room if everybody parks like they're supposed to, not more than 18 inches from the curb. And considering most of these are law enforcement people, they know that already. But anyway, the ordinance is drafted, and it's in the packet. And we did get an email of concern from Jonathan Boone with Nash County, concerned about eliminating all the parking on Drake Street, and that was in the packet. And he provided a few pictures himself of Drake Street, and then of course the ordinance itself. So
Before we discuss it, may I let Ms. Sims come and speak since she's. Dennis, could you come up and state your name and your concerns about this, Drake Street?
Okay, my name is Janet Sims, and my concern is I've tried to come up that park when they had both parking on both sides, and like he said, if they park as they should, but they don't park as they should. And I had to try to maneuver through one day, and I'm going, and here I am. I don't have a real huge car to come through here, and I had to maneuver. And my concern is anybody elderly trying to come through there with both parking. And if you got to have some parking, can you just do it on one side and not both sides? Which would make it a lot easier for not only whoever wants to go up that way, but for the elderly that wants to go up that road too. Can y'all possibly think about doing that if you just got to have the parking instead of allowing it on both sides?
Okay, thank you for your concern.
Mayor, my concern after we decided at the last meeting to do that, to not allow any parking, is that if we take that, well, the sheriff's probably gonna park where he wants to park, okay? The clerk of courts, she's gonna probably park, or some officers right there at that door as soon as you walk in. The Superior Court judge, he doesn't park on that side of the street anymore because the Superior Court room is flipped over to the other side, so he has another parking space for him. So that's the only person that's not gonna be parking over there as usual. But, if we eliminate all this parking, and I like Ms. Sims's suggestion or request that we do it on one side, but if anything that we take off of this street, law enforcement wise, you know where they're gonna park it. They're going into the parking lot. And that's gonna eliminate more parking spaces in that parking lot, which throws other people back up on Main Street, where we already have a parking problem that we can't seem to resolve. So, I would like for us to amend our motion of last month, or last council meeting, to, take out the part that says eliminate all parking on that street. And if we want to agree to just let us do it on one side, I'm willing to go along with that, but I do think we need to let them continue to use that street, because really the only people that's gonna park over there anyway is law enforcement and court people. Those are the only ones that park there. But I don't want to take those spots away and throw them into the parking lot, which is gonna eliminate spots on Monday morning when we got heavy court calendars. Throw it back on Main Street, and then again, we don't have anybody to park. So I'm open to letting us do it on one side, or just keeping it both ways. There's plenty of room to get through there if they park like that, on both sides, if everybody parks like they should.
And that's the problem.
We need to let if we do say we're gonna park on both sides, let our police department monitor that for the first couple of months to make sure that they are parking like they ought to. And if they do, don't ticket the sheriff.
Well, that's
But
the
if they
problem.
do-
You're asking our officers to ticket sheriffs, we're asking
No,
them
I'm not
to
asking our
ticket
officers to ticket the
judges.
sheriff. I'm not doing that.
Well, I think if we just
gonna
keep
open-
it to
you gonna
one
open the door, it's gonna
side,
be hard to close.
I
So-
think that it's a good compromise. And
Yeah,
so
I
if we
think it's
keep
good.
it just to the east side,
Yep.
we now leave 2 lanes of traffic to allow people to drive on. And I think that that's a nice compromise, and put up plenty of no parking signs on the other side.
I can go along with that.
I would like to say that when we closed Elm Street, and we were gonna make Drake a two-way street with no parking, that really did not help the citizens on Vale or Cedar Street or anyone up the hill behind the courthouse. And we've done very little to advocate for our citizens on the hill. We've relegated them to going through that parking lot, which technically is not legal, but they're using the parking lot as a street. And so I think the least we can do is make Drake Street navigable for the citizens who live on Vale and Cedar and up the hill court. And I agree, I think maybe having parking just on one side of the street will be palatable. But they need a clear path up Drake Street to Washington Street, even though they can only make a right. We've done very little to protect the citizens on the hill behind the courthouse.
I think too, opening up Vale Street to just being one side of the street parking and showing how to get up the 2 ways Alston Street, I think all of these things are an effort on our part to advocate for those citizens. And doing this with parking on the one side and allowing vehicles to pass on the other, I think will work out great.
So do I hear a motion, to, amend the?
I would offer a motion to amend our last decision, last month's meeting, to allow parking on that street on the east side of the street only. No parking on the west side of the
Second.
street.
All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
And I would like for the citizens to pass that around to the people that are not here, that we think that's a fair compromise for the citizens that live back there, as well as the county people that want to use that street, and for the businesses on Main Street. We've tried to reach a compromise for everybody, so I think that's the best we can do.
Absolutely. The next item on our agenda is the Washington Street trees. Coy?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The Nashville Tree Board is recommending the removal and replacement of 2 trees on Washington Street. One of them is a willow oak located in front of Nash Arts there on the corner, and the other one is also what's left of a willow oak. It's a 25-foot tree trunk on the corner of Collins and Washington Street. NCDOT has informed us that they'll be able to remove those trees after March 1 of this year at no cost to the town. And I've attached some pictures of those trees in your agenda report. In the 2022 Rich Tree Inventory report we did, the tree on the corner there in front of Nash Arts was recommended for removal with immediate pruning needed to mitigate risk. And we did, the Public Works guys went and pruned a lot of the dead wood out of that tree. If you look at it now, it's kind of hard to tell. You know, it's constantly dropping limbs. So it still poses a risk to, citizens walking up and down the sidewalk. And whenever Nash Arts has a concert, you have a lot of people standing out front waiting to get in. So it is a higher risk than some of those other trees there. The other tree on the corner of Collins, surprisingly, was not on the risk tree inventory because it has very little left to drop. It's more of an aesthetics for that tree than it is risk.
I don't know why this still standing there.
So if council chooses to recommend to DOT removal of those 2 trees, I do want to make it clear that the tree board would like to replant some trees in those locations in the fall of this year. So, the tree board doesn't want to be the board that only removes trees. We want to make sure that we're planting more than we're removing. Unfortunately, removal is part of the process for some of these risk trees.
Now, Cora, what's the problem with the tree that's up in the traffic lights? Or is that from a different angle?
That's a different angle of the same tree there at the corner in front of Nash Arts.
Okay, that's a different tree.
Different time of year, same tree.
Okay, all right.
Council, now that you've heard Corey's proposal from the tree board, do I hear a recommendation that we approve their recommendation?
Move to approve.
I'll second.
All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
All right.
Thank you.
So the motion carries. We'll remove those trees. The next item on our agenda is the Old Street Trailer Park in Randy.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. This is a concern that some of the police department patrol officers brought to me. Has to do with on-street parking of trailers. And in most cases where such trailers are parked in such a manner that they are causing problems, they typically make contact with the owner of the trailer, and that owner voluntarily moves it and places it somewhere else. From time to time, they'll run into somebody who's not quite so cooperative, and they demand to see the ordinance that says they can't park the trailer on the street. We currently don't have one. So staff took the liberty of drafting one for the council's consideration this evening, and the way it reads is that it would prohibit on-street parking of trailers for more than 4 consecutive hours unless the parking of such a trailer is necessary to services being performed or operations being carried on at an adjacent or nearby premise. It also gives the police chief the latitude of granting a request for a trailer to stay longer, provided that all the provisions of the code are complied with. So That is what's up for discussion this evening. Again, this is something you don't need to take immediate action on, but I certainly want the council to have a discussion about it.
These are safety issues. I think we definitely need this ordinance. You know, when our police are riding around town and they see a trailer like this parked on a residential street that's heavily traveled, has no reflectors, that's a safety concern. And, it's obviously commercial trailer, gooseneck. And sometimes you just have to make a judgment call. This is not safe.
Yes, this ordinance would certainly give the officer teeth to issue a citation to somebody who's not cooperative.
And keep our streets clean.
Yes,
Brand
I think we
trailers.
should have this. I just have a little bit of problem with some of the language that's in here. It seems a little confusing. So operations being carried on upon the adjacent or nearby premises, I think that's a little open-ended. And then when it says that the police chief, upon request, may permit parking of any of the above for a period of up to 24 hours, it makes it sound like anyone who is doing the service being performed or operations being carried out can keep it there indefinitely. But then anyone who's in violation of the 4-hour portion of this can go to the police chief and get the 24 hours. And so I'm just foreseeing people reading it that way, where they say, oh, well, I'm doing something over here, putting up a fence for this family, and so I can keep my trailer here for 4 weeks. So I think we just need to clean up that language and say, you know, something like, under no circumstance will any trailer be allowed to remain on the street, even when servicing a property, for longer than X amount of time. But I do know that, you know, when you're having new windows put in or whatever, sometimes it takes a long time for those things to occur, and so you have that trailer on the property on the street for a while. But I think we just need to clean that up. When can you go to the police chief to get the extension, and then put an absolute time limit on it?
Randy, help me out. The street that runs through Brooklyn Boulevard. It is Brooklyn Avenue. The little side street that runs off of Brooklyn Boulevard. What's the name of that street? It is 6th Street. I thought. No, not the long street. The street that runs through runs all the way down to the cemetery, from railroad track to Brooklyn. It's Brooklyn Boulevard. The little side street that runs off of Brooklyn Boulevard. If you're coming from the cemetery, going toward the railroad track, after you pass 6th Street, that little side street that runs to the left. It's not Rose. Battle. It runs into Freeman. But that little street, I didn't see that street in here, and we do have a reoccurring problem with a tractor-trailer driver clogging up that entire little short street up in there. And he's been asked to relocate that tractor-trailer by citizens that live back there several times. I don't know if it's been brought to the police department's attention or not. Is it Battle Drive?
So then we probably need to have something that in no case shall it be allowed to impede traffic, you know, to the point where you can't pass at all.
Well, this tractor-trailer driver, he parks it there and stays there overnight and a couple of days, and the people that live in that, go in and out that street, can't even maneuver their way through there. It's just too tight.
Excuse me, Raz, what is your thinking on this?
Thank you, Mayor. We just took a look at this today, first look. I think we all agree with Randy's observation that most towns have this kind of regulation. I know in Raleigh, they didn't allow, Raleigh allows no trailers of any kind to park on street at all, which is pretty strict. A lot of folks are not happy, you know, they can't have a utility trailer or a boat trailer parked even for a second on the streets. But so this strikes me as flexible and a good idea. The only, and I think as far as obstructing traffic or driveways, I think the attempt was to say that in no event could the parking of a trailer violate any other provision of the code, and your code has prohibitions against obstructing private drives or obstructing traffic flows or otherwise interfering. If you'd like to just add those as examples and just say, or otherwise in violation of the code, that could be some language that might be useful. The one thing that I saw that was, to me, a little unclear was that if activities or events are going on nearby or adjacent properties, that is an exception to the 4-hour restriction. But then in addition, the ordinance speaks of issuing permits or permitting long-term, 24 hours or more, parking of trailers. And I think that probably you might want to clarify when, just as the occasion arises, if the police officer is called to the scene, if they see that a trailer has been there for a long time, that's just saying this is okay because in my judgment, in the officer's judgment, it's necessary because this activity is going on. How to distinguish that circumstance for a longer period of time where your ordinance says there needs to be a permit issued for parking that can go as long, trailer parking that can be for as long as 24 hours. I mean, the distinction between ad hoc permission because it looks necessary versus requiring a permit. And is that an advanced permit or is that something that's handed out if a condition is observed by an officer or a complaint is filed? There's probably some room there for those three kinds of regulations to be clarified, how to distinguish one from the other. I think all of that sounds very reasonable.
Mayor, I would suggest maybe we table this tonight until we can do some additional research and maybe look at the wording to try to
Let you
hone
work
in
with
on some of the
Randy,
things that our attorney suggested and Kate
And
also.
I think my comments would just be being picky, really, just trying to make it abundantly clear. But I think the core regulations seem perfectly reasonable and they're typical in North Carolina cities and towns.
Thank you. So do I hear a motion to
I
table?
second. I think she made the
I
motion,
just
right?
made the
Did
motion.
you second?
Second.
All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
It will be tabled to next time. The next item on our agenda is the AFG grant. Chief Joyner.
So we have applied for the AFG grant in the past, and we have received it, I think, 3 or 4 times in the past over the last 15 years. I talked with Mr. Lance, and we had looked at doing the air packs, go ahead and replacing them. But I really feel like with everything we've got going on with the station and the fund balance where we would have to use the upgrade to do the air packs, I feel like we would probably be better just to go with the AFG grant to apply for the field station, which will be about $70,000, which would end up being 5% of that would be our cost of it, which is, I don't have that number in front of me right now because
16,000.
Yeah. So that would be our part of it. So that way we can go ahead. And I also told him that Kara's had a whole lot of success on those grants for writing for the breathing equipment stuff and letting her go ahead and do this grant so we could probably be successful on that one because we received a grant in 2018 to do the new generator and the upgrade to the climate vent system at the station. So that's one reason why I felt like it was a good time for us to go because we have finally been cleared out of that one, which it takes 4 years to clear out once you get a grant. So
Thank you.
What's the condition of the field station we've got at the main station now?
that one's fine. This would go in station 2.
I know, but,
Yeah.
but the one at main station still,
It's still, we service it every year. I mean, you're gonna have minor little things
Right.
like fittings break, but that field station's doing fine, but this one would be for station 2.
Chris, for those of us who are not familiar, explain what this is.
So the federal government gives a lot amount of money. I think this year it's gonna be $335 million is what they do. And you can apply for the grant, and if you get the grant, they award you the money to pay, and they pay 95% of whatever you're going for, and you pay the 5% of it, is the way it works. Safer grant works the same way. They've not come out with anything on Safer yet, but the AFG, that's what it is. So,
I think she wants to
Wants
know
to know what your-
what's the field station?
the
What?
field station, oh, okay. So the field station is where when we bring the air bottles back, we can fill those up so we'll have the air for our air packs so we can keep them in service. It also has the capability of filling the air trucks like the rescue truck, that field station, the full bank bottles on there that hold 6,000 PSI on them. You can fill those so that way we can have them. Most of the time we can fill about 20 bottles on the scene with those 45-minute bottles. That's what we can fill. So, is that good?
Do I hear a motion that we approve submission of an AFG grant application for the Cascade Air Bottle filling stations for the Fire Station 2?
So made.
All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. The next item on our agenda is, let's see, it is MSD Master Plan. Sherry?
Okay, I am back. So in July 2022, the town of Nashville was awarded a $36,500 rural business development grant from North Carolina USDA Rural Development Agency, in which Withers Ravenel was the consultants that the Downtown Nashville Strong Advisory Board and planning staff worked with. And the consultants that we worked with from Withers Ravenel was Daniel Raw and Brian Starkey. And with this particular Municipal Service District, or MSD, the Downtown Nashville Strong Advisory Board served as a steering committee. And as in the MSD plan, the purpose was to improve downtown and encourage economic development through strategic enhancements. And that was by way of sidewalk improvements, overhead utility burials, and additional green spaces or tree plantings, just to name a few. And within public involvement, we had steering committees, and the plan is show 3, but we just actually recently just had a 4th steering committee meeting. And also with public involvement, we had a public workshop. And I will just briefly go through the MSD plan. So with for the planning efforts that was discussed, so Withers Ravenel recently visited the previous plans that we had before, just to get a history and background of everything and what the MSD was. And so the Nashville Comprehensive Pedestrian Plan from 2008 was researched, along with the Nashville Economic Vitality Plan, the Nashville Downtown Strong, Nashville Comprehensive Plan, and the Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources Comprehensive Master Plan. And also, in addition to that, the site visit was conducted. Withers Ravenel came out and took photos, and from there, they did site observations, in which they did site analysis, land use for downtown, which is also on page 12 in the MSD plan. And some of those site observations, they went into detail for Barnes Street, Church Street, Body Street, West Washington Street, East Washington Street. And they also made or took photos for some of those areas, which is also listed on page 14. So once they did all those site observations, they drafted concept developments and streetscape designs with certain options, and also they went into detail with the strengths, opportunities, challenges, priority design elements, which are also on page 16 and 17 in your packet, in the MSD plan. And within the concept development and the alternatives, so they went into detail again with Barnes Street and showed the existing conditions and options, and they gave options of what the concept could look like. And also they did Washington and Barnes Street intersection the same way. They did a Southern Gateway concept. Also, they did Church Street alternatives, existing condition they listed, and options they could do there, along with Body Street alternatives. Washington Street alternatives, the Washington Trailhead, which is near Stony Creek. And again, as discussed before, the public involvement included steering committee meetings and public workshop, in which we had the public to come out and information gathered from there. Withers Ravenel took public engagement findings, gathered all the information, and came up with a final concept. And within that final concept, it included public spaces, enhanced landscaping, pedestrian amenities and safety, multi-use paths, gateway signage and monuments, connectivity and activation of downtown core. And then after that, the Downtown Nashville Strong Advisory Board met, and at the end of that meeting, they wanted to see 3D renderings of what the project could possibly look like. But again, this is actually a concept, and in order to further receive grant funding, we need to at least get a concept, just to have something in writing, because this is nothing that's set in stone, because it can be changed, and we just needed this plan in place so we can get further funding, or receive an opportunity to have further funding. So you have your street, that's when the streetscape plans came in. They did a before and after of Barnes Street, which is on page 30. Church Street, they did a before and after on page 31. And Body Street, which is on page 32. Washington Street on 33. And after that, with those renderings, they then, as you have listed in your packet, they have opinion of probable construction costs along with funding strategies. And also, in addition, in your packet, you have this portion of the sign-up sheet, of what the sign-up sheet looks like. And you have the preference boards that are listed on page 44 through 46. And at the end of the package, you had your workshop summary of how the public, of what they preferred for the actual conception drawings.
Thank
And
you.
the municipal service, I'm sorry, the Downtown Nashville Strong is recommending approval of the MSD plan.
So do I hear a motion to approve this resolution 2023-4, adopting the master development plan for the Nashville Municipal Service District?
Can I make one correction first?
Sure.
Sorry, on page 13, it says, in the last paragraph on the left-hand side, it says it is the same location that the Nashville Farmers Market is currently, and was annexed into the town's limit on October 4th, 2022. I think that's supposed to be the town's MSD.
Yeah.
And then just a request, the first two pictures are Nash Arts, which is outside of the MSD, and Faith Christian Ministry, which I'm assuming does not pay into that that fund. So if we could just have the downtown scape, that would be perfect.
And I will add, there are little typos or other minor things of when, so we will update the dates in there, because I know it's had December for adoption of this, so we will put the correct date in there. And the zip code was wrong, so we'll make that change.
That's the only thing I saw.
So do you make a motion?
I make a motion that we approve it otherwise, yes.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
The resolution does carry. The next item on our agenda is the review proposal from AECOM, a civic engineering firm to provide grant applications. Okay, Coy, tell us about that.
Good evening again.
Good evening.
So the next item I have for council to consider is a proposal to apply for funding through the North Carolina Parks and Recreation Trust Fund, or Part F. And I do have a PowerPoint that was attached to the agenda report. So first, a little bit about Part F. Each year since 1994, Part F awards matching grants to local governments for parks. This statewide program helps local governments reach their park and public access goals to improve the quality of life in their communities. Part F funds have been awarded to the town in the past and assisted with the development of both Stony Creek Environmental Park and Glover Park. Next slide, please. So if council chooses to apply in this funding cycle, the application review deadline is March 15th. That's with RRS. They will make some recommendations and changes to that application. And then the submittal deadline to the Parks Authority is May 1st. The town can request up to $500,000 with each application. Part F is a 50-50 matching grant, and announcement of awarded grant funds is made in the fall of each year. So if awarded, the town would have 3 years to complete the project. Next slide. Part F selects the funds using, or which projects it funds using numerous variables, including geographic location, presence of other funding sources, population, level of compliance with prior grant agreements, and amount of funding requested. The main two variables they use in the application, which was also attached to your agenda report, they have a scoring sheet in there. That scoring sheet and the total amount of funds available. So last year, Part F awarded $17 million to 39 local park and recreation projects across the state. Funds are allocated each year by the North Carolina General Assembly. As far as I can tell, the amount for this cycle has yet to be determined. So we don't know how much is in the pot. I would assume that it is similar to last year. Next slide, please. So with the recent completion of the town's comprehensive Parks and Recreation Master Plan, we feel like the town is in a good position to submit a competitive application for improvements at Glover Park. One of the goals identified in the comprehensive plan is to upgrade parks to include amenities reflecting the latest trends and community needs. Some of the amenities identified as high priority in the comprehensive plan include a splash pad, picnic shelters, trail, play spaces, fishing access, and pickleball courts. So Part F relies heavily on community input. So at this point, it's hard to identify a specific project. Once we start this process, we would do a public workshop for this specific Part F application. At that time, we would have a better idea of what those amenities would be. And of course, ultimately, it's council's decision to move forward with that. Based off of input from that plan and looking at the space available at Glover Park, we've identified some of the high priority amenities that we think that public engagement would point to and that would be beneficial. Again, Part F does not want me as the recreation director to tell the community what they want or what they need in their park, but rather get that input from the community and work that application around those recommendations. So this is our best guess of what amenities might go out there. And they include a picnic shelter with restrooms, a splash pad, and pickleball courts. Based off of what I could find online, of what these projects normally run, we determined a cost estimate, which is up on the screen there, and a total project estimate, assuming these amenities, range from $332,000 to $602,000, half of which would be covered by the grant if awarded. So also in your packet, you have a proposal and a estimated fee from AECOM, which is a civil engineering firm. That is a firm that is currently working on the bike and pedestrian plan for the town. So AECOM has submitted a proposal to the town to assist the town in Part F grant preparation for improvements at 2 Glover Park. The deliverables for AECOM include a programmatic plan for Glover Park, assistance with preparing materials for a public workshop, a summary from the public workshop, and a completed Part F application. And the reason it says it that way, one of the things we did discussing with them is we're going to handle the public workshop in-house, trying to get that fee down as much as possible. So the estimated fee for these services is $12,730. This item was proposed in the fiscal year 23 budget and was not funded at that time. It was decided at that time to wait until a project was identified and do a budget amendment if council was in favor of submitting an application. So since the cost of these professional services is under $50,000, the council can exempt this project from the Minnie Brooks Act requirement of using a qualification selection process for selecting architect, engineer, or other professional services. And by working with a civil engineering firm, we believe that we can submit a very competitive application. So, and I will be glad to answer any questions you may have on that.
I have two just general questions about Part F grants. So one, if we went forward with the application and were granted funds and decided not to move forward with it, would that affect us receiving Part F grants in the future?
I would assume it would be similar to what the mayor was saying earlier, that might not look favorably on the town for future applications.
My second is, if we go forward with it and receive the grant and actually take it and move forward with the project, does that affect our next application for a Part F grant, where they say, okay, they just received something, so we're not going to give them something for another 5 years, 10 years, or whatever it is?
I'm not, and you're talking about like applying year after year?
Right, so if we had something even larger in the works 3 years from now, or?
I would have to ask that question to be sure. I know, for example, Nash County applied for Miracle Park. I believe they applied in 2017 and were awarded that grant. In the past cycle, they were awarded Phase 2 at Miracle Park. So those two are about 5 years apart. I don't think there's anything that says that you can't apply year after year. But I would have to ask for clarification on that if they wanted you to finish one project, see it through to completion before they would award another one.
Okay.
Any other questions for Corey? Somebody else?
So let's go forward.
I think we need to go forward with the process for getting an application in place.
Do I
Yes,
hear,
make that as a motion.
do I hear a second?
Second.
All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye.
Thank you.
No. Did I hear a no? I'm sorry. Did everybody say? Okay, great. Thank you kindly. The next item on our agenda is our Finance Officer, John O'Keefe.
Three budget amendments. Budget Amendment 13, it's for $49,986,000. This is recognizing the award of a police grant for their accreditation services for building upfits.
Is that a matching grant or just?
No, it was no matching, no matches.
Straight out, man. Move to approve.
I hear a second.
Second.
All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Budget Amendment 13 is approved.
Budget Amendment 14, the library received $38,488 for, it was essentially the library's ARPA money. This is to be used to pay for one of the HVACs in this building is down. It's to pay for that and smaller building upfits. There's, again, no matching on it.
Move to approve.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Budget Amendment 15.
This is to record the state seizure, federal seizure money in the amount of $36,246.
Do I hear a motion?
Move to approve.
Second. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor and council, if we have Officer Shockley here this evening, if you would like for him to let you know some of the things that this grant will do for the evidence room at the PD, he'd be more than happy to tell
That
you
would be
about that.
nice. Where is he? Didn't recognize you.
Shaved a little bit of my hair off. Good evening. So the grant is going to help with accreditations in the future. I spoke to Chief Winston and Randy on a few occasions, and a lot of the problems when you go with evidence, one, it is your biggest liability. Evidence has to be broken down into U.S. currency, narcotics, general, STEMS kits, which would be your sexual assault, rape kits, which Raleigh is just now allowing us to house. And the new accreditation program, one they call it CLIA, and then they have other ones through North Carolina. There's several. But it's all kind of the baseline. They want your evidence separate. The police department, when I got here and when the administration got here, has always been the same. It's all kept in the same place up until the STEMS program out of Raleigh got put in place, where all the rape kits are now housed and refrigerated in Raleigh. We actually moved today. Chief Winstead got a electronic voucher system set up with the bank, so our currency will no longer be housed in-house. It'll be through a non-interest bank account at Southern Bank. We spoke to Marsigli, the new DA, his first day in office, and he approved it, as well as Judge Wiggins. So we're slowly working towards that with the new project for the evidence room. We'll be able to expand it, which is space that's just needed in general. When this building was originally picked, it was picked for a smaller population, not as much crime. We're experiencing a huge uptick in seizures, crime, on all of our evidence. So we'll be able to separate them in different areas, especially our guns, in general, and narcotics. And the currency through the bank with Chief Winstead's idea is huge, because your biggest liability in the police department is your evidence, and one being your rape kits and your money. People get bent out of shape over money. So
Officer Shockley, these are funds that were received from some sort of arrest where drugs were involved, and these are federal funds that we're receiving here. Is that correct?
So what Randy's talking about is the actual evidence grant.
Okay.
The grant is for the revamp of the evidence room itself. We're trying to expand it, enclose, and create a new door so that we can house certain things in certain locations. We started the process about 3 or 4 weeks after Chief Bucket left, and we had to just start the way we want to see it in the future and put things to the side. We do yearly audits. Every command staff change we've done audits, because I personally don't want the liability. So we're completely legal. We're just looking to create more space, one, because we're taking in a lot more evidence, and two, we're hoping to use this as a chance to separate the items that need to be separated.
Do we have the space to separate these items in the current building? Can
Just
we make
certain
it work?
certifications, no. This is a huge help. That building we're in, I don't think will ever be a police department the size of what the town's future is. But those are discussions that Chief Winston would have to have. The evidence room itself, this will significantly help.
Thank you so kindly. We appreciate your input.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you for the work you do.
Well, that concludes the items on our agenda. Town Manager, do you have anything you would like to add to tonight's meeting?
No, Mayor, I'm good. Thank you.
Any council member?
I have a question about the dog park. How's that coming along?
I'll turn that one over to Coy.
Yes, ma'am, the dog park. So we're kind of at a standstill right now, where we've been waiting since the beginning of November to get a long enough dry spell for us to finish that project out. We've received the dog agility equipment, and we have partially installed that. Right in the middle of the dog park, it is holding water, and we're once it dries out enough that we can smooth that out, put that equipment in, and put a healthy coating of mulch, that'll complete that project. So the amount of work needed to complete that is minimal. It's just getting a dry spell long enough to where it'll dry out for us to fix it this one time and hopefully not have that issue again there.
So do you think that's gonna be ongoing though? I mean, because it is wetland.
It is wetland. What I'm hoping is where it's holding water at, we were planning on putting a large mulch bed there anyway. So I think that will help the problem. It'll probably be similar to Stony Creek as a whole, with it being in a lowland. When you get a lot of rain, it'd be wet for a couple days before it dries out. But I think overall that'll help it.
Thank you. Any other comments, council?
Noise ordinance, has that coming?
So we have yet to get Chief Winstead together with Raz to go through that, but it's on the agenda for next week to do that. So we should have that at the February 3rd council meeting. The PD is also working on a panhandling ordinance. We've had some complaints of panhandling in the Walmart area, and again, it's one of those things we don't have an ordinance on. Speaking with Raz and Emily, it is one of those things that you have to walk a fine line on too. So at some point in the future, we will be hopefully having a panhandling ordinance for the council to consider.
Thank you. Any other? If not, I'd like to thank all the citizens for coming out tonight, and I will call this meeting of the town council adjourned.
Move to adjourn.
Move to adjourn, thank you.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.